The Bloodline is set to take on Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, Kevin Owens at WWE Money in the Bank in Toronto. And while right now, as I'm recording this, we don't know who the actual three members of the current four-member Bloodline will be in this actual match in the six-man tag, but we do sort of expect a possible combination to include Solo Sikoa, who took things to a new level, as we know, on last week's SmackDown, as he finally put his hands on the wise man Paul Heyman, and a brutal attack from the new version of Bloodline with Jacob Fatu, Talla Tonga, Tonga Loa to put the Shield powerbomb on Paul Heyman through the table. And now the big question is, how will Roman Reigns and everyone else who has been tied to Paul Heyman within this Bloodline story over the years respond? And though we may not expect Reigns to return at Money in the Bank, some do. I think that probably the likely destination will still be SummerSlam. There are still a lot of possible ways this could go, and there is one theory out there that continues to be kind of bantered about that does make a lot of sense when you think about it. I'm not saying it's going to make everyone happy, but it would make a lot of sense, and that theory has a lot to do with what happened a year ago at Money in the Bank. If you remember, July 1, 2023, in London, England, it was the Bloodline Civil War, where you had Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa team up to take on Jimmy and Jey Uso in a matter of who will be the ones. That was the tagline. That was sort of what was at stake. And we know there was a sort of somewhat stunning occurrence in the finish of that match, where it was Jey Uso who pinned Roman Reigns in a somewhat surprising move, I think, to a lot of people, to set up their one-on-one match at SummerSlam later on that month. Now, though, you have a very somewhat similar dynamic in play here, as it is a situation where with this six-man tag, if Solo Sikoa is involved, could that mean you're going to get a scenario where Solo Sikoa pins Cody Rhodes in a six-man tag team match? Again, there's a lot at play here because you do have all these different people who could be factored into the finish here. The problem, as I said, is that we don't know who exactly is going to be on that three-man team for the Bloodline. Who's going to be the odd man out? You would think that if you're doing this, you want to have Solo involved, but this could all be a moot point if Solo is not involved in this match, and it is Jacob Fatu and the Tongans against the other three. Perhaps this means nothing. But if Solo is involved in this match, and I would think that you would want to really push the fact that Solo is not afraid to get his hands dirty here and really wants to get his hands on Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens for what they've tried to do to the Bloodline. We saw that huge brawl to start the SmackDown show in Madison Square Garden, which led to Cody, Orton, and Owens being sort of led away by police and all that, which kept them away from what happened at the end of the show with Paul Heyman. But you would think that Solo would be involved here because this is a scenario where Solo can pin one of these guys, specifically Cody, to set up that one-on-one match, which you know we talked about in previous videos. That seems to be the biggest indicator of where they're headed for the SummerSlam main event, is Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa for the Undisputed title. And that is why I would, put two and two together and think that is where Roman Reigns returns to get his revenge on Solo, the new Bloodline, however they decide to do it. But if you're asking, does Solo really have to pin Cody for them to be able to have the main event? I think that if you tie in the past history, if we go back to last year's Money in the Bank, it was how they set up the Jey versus Roman match, and it would make it some, kind of tying into that same sort of thread with Solo Sikoa doing the same thing here to pin Cody. Now, I know there would be a lot of people, there would be a backlash probably, to Solo pinning Cody. But for the story, as I said, it would make sense. You could understand why they would do it to set up the match. And is Solo going to pin Cody clean, if that is the setup here? I don't think it's going to be clean, because why? We just said there's 4 on the Bloodline, there's 3 on the other side. You could have an interference scenario here for whoever the odd man out is for the Bloodline, whether that may be Jacob Fatu, whether that's one of the Tongans, we don't really know. But you could have an interference set up, or where things kind of break down to the point to where Cody is sort of, taken out, right? He's incapacitated here, and that allows Solo to put the finishing touches on Cody to get the win. And then, as we said, pretty much book his championship opportunity against Cody at SummerSlam. I think that is something that sounds very predictable, I guess, in a sense, for some people. Although, as I mentioned, it may just be too unrealistic because I know there are a lot of people, as we've talked about in these videos, that may not approve of the job that Solo has done or that Solo has been put into this spotlight as the new leader and head of the table right now, a new tribal chief with no Roman Reigns involved. But I still think that this is not something, as I said, that will probably make a lot of people happy. But if you're talking about how you further things from here, Solo getting a pin on Cody the untouchable one, right? Like he has been untouchable since he defeated Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, and really even before that, if you think about it, and really the build to the biggest match of the year, one of the biggest matches in recent history of WWE, and for Cody to get that triumph and now be the champion, for him to be pinned by Solo Sikoa would be a significant step towards making the Bloodline feel more legitimate because of getting a win like that over Cody. It's possible, and I think this is, as I said, this is where things are going to get pretty fascinating if this is the direction they go in, which no matter whether Solo pins Cody or not, I think you are going to see the Bloodline get the win here because you do want to add even more fuel to this, right? We've talked about it. They took things to a completely different level when they put Heyman through that table. But now, if they're able to get the win on a six-man tag, and it's the numbers game, whether it is the outlier in the current four-man group, or could this be the debut of Talla Tonga, right? The former Hikuleo in New Japan. We've talked about that trademark WWE has filed. Seems to be for him. Is this where we get him debuting? And then you've got the full group there, right? You've got your five, and that gets you closer to that War Games kind of spot at Survivor Series, which before that, you've still got the possibilities of Roman Reigns returning, Jey Uso returning, Jey getting involved in the story, which we know Jey's going to be in the Money in the Bank. Could he somehow factor into this that same night? They're in the same building. He's friends with Cody. All that different stuff, right? There's a lot of different dynamics there. Sami Zayn, we've talked about him. Does he get involved in this? So maybe it goes just beyond the people who are in this match, and I think that's a real possibility because you do have an opportunity to bring some of those guys back into the fold here, knowing that you're getting to perhaps that big moment at SummerSlam. And I know some people are still predicting that Roman comes back at Money in the Bank, and that's why you're thinking, why would Roman wait until SummerSlam? Why not just go ahead and do it now? Because the timing is, hey, he wants to get back as soon as possible after what they just did to Heyman. I can understand that. I tend to think, though, they are going to hold this off for SummerSlam, especially, as I've said before in that previous video, if they are pushing Cody versus Solo as the main events over the other potential matches, right? Rollins versus Gunther. If Rollins were to be able to beat Damian Priest for the world title at Money in the Bank, you've also got that scenario where you've got Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk seems to be on the cards for SummerSlam. And so it's big. Like, to do Cody versus Solo, that's huge. And it is the, your biggest champion in the company, your biggest superstar in Cody versus the top group, which is the Bloodline. And so it would make a lot of sense to do that, to really get someone else factored in here and start pushing your way, not just towards SummerSlam, but towards a potential War Games match at Survivor Series, and maybe even further towards whatever else is to come with all the different match combinations we've talked about, within this this group, with everyone that's tied in to the Bloodline. So I think there is a very realistic possibility that Solo Sikoa is going to pin Cody Rhodes if Solo is involved in this match, if he is one of the three people for the Bloodline. I think it is a good possibility that Solo could do this because they did it last year with Jey. It was kind of a stunning move at the time, but if you see Solo do that same thing where he pins Cody, and I know there will be some backlash to Solo being the first person to pin Cody Rhodes after the championship win. But if you think about the way they're going with this and them trying to make this a legitimate group of ruthless badasses who will do anything to kind of mold the Bloodline into their version of what it needs to be, maybe there is that scenario where this just, is a wild brawl and Cody gets taken out by someone and Solo is the one to capitalize and get the win. That is certainly a possibility, I think. But there are also a lot of other possibilities as to how this match could play out. You guys let me know what you think. Who do you think is going to be the winning team in this match between the Bloodline, Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens? Who do you think gets the pin? Who do you think takes the pin? How do you see this playing out at Money in the Bank? And do we see any of those big returns? Do we see Roman Reigns? Do we see Jey Uso? Do we see Jey get involved somehow? Do we see Talla Tonga, Hikuleo get involved in this? Want to know what you guys think. Always enjoy the discussion. Let me know your predictions on what's going to happen in this big six-man tag team match at Money in the Bank in Toronto. As always, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button on your way out. Always enjoy the feedback, and you guys give me your predictions for the six-man tag at Money in the Bank.